welcome to this Advanced Steel Skill Builder webinar, where today we're going to be looking at labels on drawings. Just before we get into everything, can someone just confirm in the question, or the chat, that you can see my screen okay and you can hear me all right? Lovely, thank you, Dave. Perfect. Okay. So let's crack on then. So most of you will have seen this already, but for those of you that are new to these webinars, a little bit about me. So my name's Rob Merriman. I'm one of the application engineers here at Greytech. So I have 12 years of experience in the construction industry, nearly 13, 14 now. The first 8 years of that was as an architectural metalwork and structural steel draftsman using advanced steel. During that time, I worked in 2 subcontract drawing offices, so that allowed me to work on various projects for multiple different fabricators across different steelwork sectors. I've taken that first-hand industry experience. I now work, like I said, as an application engineer for Greytech UK, so doing technical support, training, demonstrations, anything to do with structures, basically, and software packages that I look at. Predominantly focused on advanced steel, but we look at AutoCAD, Revit, Navisworks, Recap, and Fusion 360. So a little bit about Greytech for those of you that are new to Greytech. We are 30 years old, headquartered in France. We operate across 11 countries worldwide, and that's through 48 offices. We are healthy, grown, and profitable, and quickly becoming one of the largest Autodesk partners worldwide. We have over 550 staff. 100 are based in our research and development center, so they create our own Greytech products such as the power packs or advanced design and things like that. And we are here to work with you guys. So on our technical support, we have a 98% good or excellent feedback, and that's over 50,000 support cases, and we produce and run over 3,500 training courses per year. So why Greytech? We have broken a sort of typical project down into what we call our 4 key pillars. So they are, you can see in the top there, create, simulate, fabricate, and manage. So create is using the Autodesk products and then enhancing them with the Greytech power packs. Simulate is taking your model and checking that it can actually sort of stand up in the real world environment. So we have our own analysis package for that, which is advanced design. Fabricate is taking those BIM deliverables through to the finished fabricated product. We are looking at advanced steel today, so advanced steel obviously has a foot in the create and fabricate pillars, and obviously we're going to be looking at labels on drawings, so we're going to be looking at the fabricate side of things today. And then the final pillar is manage. All of our pillars create documentation, work in progress, documents, data, and more these days that needs to be collaborated with an external common data environment. If you're working with 5 or 6 main contractors, for example, you might be having to upload your documents to 5 or 6 different common data environments, and they all work in a slightly different way to each other. So we have our own Greytech product called OpenTree, and OpenTree is your sort of portal to talk to all of those common data environments. Just a quick recap on some of the learning materials that are available through Greytech. So this webinar is usually one of the first questions I get asked. This webinar is being recorded and it will be uploaded to our content portal. I probably need to update this slide. I think we're up to about 60 plus webinars now to watch on our content portal, our advanced steel specific content portal. So that's the last 4 or 5 years of webinars that we as Greytech in the UK have done. I have also printed this presentation as a PDF handout. So the links that you see there, if you download the PDF handout, you can click the links. Our Greytech Advanced Steel blogs, So we try and do a couple of blogs a month, just putting out tips and tricks, things that we pick up. Myself and Alec and John are always learning like you guys. So anything that's new for us, we will try and share it with you guys. Greytech Advantage. So if you're an actual Greytech customer, you will have access to our dedicated portal. It's where you download things like your power packs, but it's also where we put up our BIM Up conferences. So these are the conferences that we run once a year. There are online digital conferences. When we run an Advanced Steel user group, the recording will go up onto the Advantage site. So there's hundreds of hours of things to watch on the content portal. And then obviously our Greytech events, so BIM Up conferences, Advanced Steel user groups, all the webinars that we run, you can find those on our Greytech events page. And obviously, if you follow me and Alec on social media, we will share any upcoming events. The Advanced Steel Power Pack. So just in case you're not aware of it, the Power Pack is Greytech's add-on to Advanced Steel. So if you are a Greytech customer in the UK, then it's part of your subscription and your support package. So we break the Power Pack down into 5 key areas. We've got create macros. So one of them is the structure designer. We can create those sorts of structures with one dialog. It won't do the connections, but it will speed up the modeling of your actual structure. Create macros. So we have our own Greytech connection vault where we've got more than 25 new parametric connections. Create elements. We have just commands that will allow you to create castellated beams. We have a folded plate extender, which a lot of people aren't aware of. You can just click the edge of a plate and you can add a plate of your own size and angle on there. If you're working with helical or spiral commands, you can create those in there. We have BIM import and export tools. So if you need to export your model or individual parts to DWG, STEP, or IGES, we can do that with the Power Pack. And then finally, there's data that people aren't aware of. So we have updated and added some cold roll suppliers. We've added things like FH Brundle Weld mesh. We've added new bolts in there. I haven't even touched on the stairs and railings tools that come with the Power Pack Professional. But we don't have a huge amount of time today. So what we're going to look at today, we're going to look at labels on drawings. So we're going to look at, firstly, what the labels will actually show and how you can see and change what you'll actually get out of the box. We'll then look at some of the new features with labels. The new features that were added to Advanced Steel for labels were added in 2020 and 2022. So a lot of today is going to be covering these new additions because I'm not sure everyone is aware of what they are and what you can do with them. So we'll look at arranging labels once they've been run. Then we'll look at aligning them to a reference. Although it's technically a symbol and not a label, you can align your cut views, which is a sort of hidden button that I'm not sure, again, too many people are aware of. We'll look at what the labeling for holes wants to do and what we can do with that. This one is new for 2022, what you can do with your leader line behavior. We'll actually then look at the content for the label. Sometimes there are tokens that are missing and things like that, or you don't get every token available with every drawing. So we'll look at that. We'll look at what you can do with weld leader lines, because you can actually add and remove leader lines for welds. And then finally, this is sort of sprinkled in throughout the session, we'll look at some of the management settings. In terms of our sort of presentation from me, that's really all we're going to go into today. It's going to be it's just going to be me showing you everything in Advanced Steel. So any questions, please type them in the box. I did record this last week, so everything is recorded, but any questions that pop up, I will come back to them at the end of the session and we'll look at the questions then. What we're going to start with, we're going to start by actually looking at how the labels show on drawings and how you can sort of tell which label is going to do what. So we're using cameras here. If we look at this camera, the camera uses a drawing style. So the drawing style here is floor plan hot rolled all. If we look at the 3D view that I'm going to run, that runs 3D view all with assembly labels. So how do we know what the label is going to look like before we run the drawing? So those cameras use styles. There is a palette that we can open for drawing styles. This is the sort of old way, if I should bring that palette in, this is the old way of running views before cameras existed. So you'd have to do everything through choose the style and then run everything. But what you have in here, you have this little flyer here, this little tooltip, this help area, and this is in all palettes. So just as a general advanced steel tip, if you want to see what the base plate will do in the description, it will show you there in there. If you look at your drawing processes and you hover over something, it will tell you what the process is doing. So all of these palettes have this little help flyout. So if we look at, say, floor plan hot rolled all, what you can do in this area here is you can, with the left mouse button, you can pan around, you can zoom in. Now it's not perfect because it is just an image, but you can see roughly what the label is going to look like. So we can see in there is a description, there is a mark number. If we look at, say, the 3D view, the 3D view all ones, it does just give us assembly labels, and that's going to give us the assembly label in a balloon. If we look at, say, the detail box one, you can see that the detail box one gives us a bit more information. It gives us the assembly number and then the section size. Or if it's just an attached part, it'll give us the plate thickness and the individual part number. So you can use that style palette to show you roughly what the drawings are actually going to look like before we actually run them. Now, if you wanted to change how they ran from the drawing style, you would have to go and look at customizing that style, and we could look at customizing the label content. We're not going to go into drawing style customization for labels today, because that will probably be about 2 to 4 hours we could probably do on that. So we're just looking at what you get on the drawings automatically and how we can manipulate the content of those labels. So if we select these two cameras, in fact I'll do them one at a time. We'll run this one first, do it to my drawing processes. I'll do camera selected A1. And then I'll do the 3D view as camera selected A1. So if we have a look at our document manager, you can see in here that this one has run with the, I can zoom in on this one, we can see it, with the mark number and then the section size. Our 3D view, that has run with the mark number in a balloon aligned with the object. That's because those are the rules that are set up in those two different styles. So that is what the system is using. So let's open up a few of these drawings. We'll look at some of the real basics. Now, one thing that I always do like to highlight, because they are labels, but they're not like AutoCAD text. These are advanced steel intelligent labels. So if we go to this view here, and what the system has done is, within its rules, it doesn't think it has enough room to fit the label for this beam right next to it, and the same with this one. So we've got 4 labels all next to each other. Because these are advanced steel intelligent labels, if I click on the label itself, it will actually select in blue which label is associated with which beam. So that one there is associated with that. If I push the escape key and select this one, this one is associated with this beam in here. So then we can start to arrange a label, and I'm just gonna put it there. We'll actually look at how we can arrange all of these in a minute. So just something to highlight, if you're not sure what a label is associated with, if you click on the label, the element that it's associated with will highlight in however you've got your system to show the highlight. Mine set up to show it in blue. Okay, so let's run through some of those new features from 2020 and 2022 to do with labels that we were discussing. So the first one we're going to look at, in fact what I'll do here, I'll just change the scale of this view. Probably drop that down to 1:25. Or increase it to 1:25. Too big. 1:33 1/3. Okay, so we'll put that label in there. Now, let's say that I want to move this label out here, and then I want these two labels in here to be arranged in the same way. What we can do is we can select the label that we've manipulated, right click, and we can choose arrange labels. And if I click these two, it will then arrange them. It doesn't put them at the same angle, but it puts them in the same plane or the same reference. So you don't have to necessarily draw AutoCAD lines that you might have done in the past. I know when I was detailing, it's quite a long time ago now, but when I was detailing, obviously these tools didn't exist. So we would draw in construction lines and then look to arrange them using the construction lines. There's obviously no need to do that anymore. The other thing that you can do is we can arrange to a reference. So let's say that I want to arrange all of these labels so they actually align horizontally in here. I'm going to move this label out to here. What I can then do is I can select the label, right click and choose align labels to a reference. And then you can either use an object as a reference, so I could align with this, let's say, and it will then align them with this column in here. But I don't want to do that, and we're just going to move this one up a little bit. I'm going to repeat that in there. I'm going to right click and I'm going to choose align labels to a reference. Now if I want to align these horizontally, if you look at my command line in here, it says align with the X or the Y axis passing through the reference label. So if you imagine we put an X which would go horizontally and a Y which would run vertically in here, because I want to align them with this label here, I'm going to say I want to arrange with the Y axis that is pushing through that label. So I can say arrange with the Y, click these, and then they will align. If I draw a sort of line through these, you can see that they are now all aligning. Now it won't change the angle of the labels, but what I'll do is I'll just come in here, turn a few of these snaps off. I'm just going to put nearest on. Now I put it on for, or I used to put it on for labeling, because I can then control where the label is going to go. And we will come back and we will look at what this is doing in here. But if I do something like that, where I've got all these labels horizontally, I can do the same thing. Select the first label, the one that we want to align everything with. Choose align labels to a reference. And like we said, if you imagine there would be an X-axis through that label and a Y-axis through the label, I want to arrange these with the Y-axis. So in my command line, I can either click on the Y, or I can actually type Y, because you'll see in there the Y is blue. and then I can say arrange these ones in the Y, and they are now all arranged in the Y axis. We can do the same as probably what we would call, we want to align everything vertically. So if I insert a few labels in here, let's put this one over there. I can select this label in here, right click, and choose align to reference, and this time I can choose the X, and then I can choose these labels, and they are now all aligned that way. So you can either move a label and say I want all of the other labels to arrange, I want to arrange the labels according to this one that I clicked in here, and that will arrange them. Or you can align them to an object in your view, or you can align them based on the x-axis or the y-axis of the original label. Let's look at some cut views. So cut views are sections. Now what I'll do in here is I'll just do create cut view. Now although we're looking at labels on drawings, when you do create cut view, what the system will do is the system will choose a default style in the system. Now I did cover this in a previous webinar called working with drawings or resolving common drawing issues. It'll be available in our content portal. If you click on the word settings, you can then go and see what style the system is using. Now what the system is using, my Advanced Steel is an out-of-the-box sort of setup of Advanced Steel. It's using cross-sections right, which is actually an assembly style. Well, I'm in a GA drawing. I don't want it to use an assembly style. I might want to say, well, let's use section selected plus pick box. Let's use a section because I'm adding a section in here. The scale, it used to match the scale of the original view. It doesn't anymore, so I know that this view is at 1 to 25, so I want my scales to be 1 to 25. And what I'll do is I'm just going to add in a section from here. We're just going to do a section through each grid line. So I'm going to do a section through grid line A. And a year or two ago, can't quite remember off the top of my head, the system did add some new section arrows in. So if you're doing sections on GAs, you will get a different arrow than if you're doing sections on part and assembly drawings. There are management defaults to control that, and there's also symbols associated with everything. But what I'm doing in here is I'm adding my cut views in, and you can see that wherever I start my window and end my window, that is where the arrowheads align to. Now, because we're still detailers, we're quite picky. We want our drawings to all work quite nicely. So there's my 3 extra views. You can see in here that these labels for the sections don't align. Now I could click it and I could look to align it that way, but if you've got lots of them, I don't have loads here, but if you did have lots of them, what you can do, if you on the labels and dimensions tab click the little drop down, there is now an option in here, align cut view symbols to a reference. So what you do is you choose which is your reference. So I quite like the position of section B. So I'll say, okay, this is my reference. And on the left-hand side of the drawing, these label or these symbols for the sections will now align. In here, what I'll do is we'll bring that one out a little bit. Click the little drop down, choose align cut view symbols to reference, choose that one. Now it will do all of them. So if I had a cut view that was only going through a particular section, it would override that and we'd maybe have to put 1 back. But if you needed to align 5 or 10, it's a very quick way of aligning those cut views. I know strictly not a label, but a new feature that was added for 2020 that might be overlooked. The next thing we're going to look at is the whole label behavior. So what we'll do, we'll run a part drawing for this plate. Now, because this is a default, there's a system setting that says don't display labels for standard holes. So what we'll do, we'll just make this a bit bigger so everyone can see what the system's going to do. And we're going to look at that management default a little bit later. But if I say insert label, you can see, if I bring this out here, that label is picking up both holes because they are in a group of 2. Now for 2022, what will happen, sorry, that's wrong. In 2020, the label behavior for holes was changed, just for holes at the moment. What happens is, because this is a group of 2, and we can tell that when I click the label, both the holes get selected. If I move this label towards the bottom hole, that label will jump automatically to that hole. The other thing that will happen is you'll notice that the arrowhead will now actually work its way around the hole. But as soon as I go to that point, it'll now jump to the nearest hole within the group. Now you do have, if you don't like that and you want it on a particular hole, you do have in here automatic leader line for position for labels on hole pattern. If I untick that and I move down to the second hole, the label will stay on the hole that it was on. You'll notice that the arrow will still move around the circle, but it won't now jump to the nearest hole. If I tick that option within the label, it will now do what we want it to do. Now I'm sure that people have already started asking this question in the question dialogue. It does depend. You might get, for example, on like a long beam that's got 10 holes in there, you might get 5 labels that say 2 holes, you might get 1 label that says 10 holes, you might get 10 individual labels that say 1 hole. Although they might have been modelled as a group, what Advanced Steel is looking for is it's looking on the drawing for these holes to be within a certain distance of each other. And it will depend on different styles, but you see in there that's 13 millimeters. I think on different drawings, as the holes get further away, it sees them as different drawings. It does also depend on how you model them. However the system shows it on the drawing is not something we can change. There's no management default for it. So that's the whole behavior. (2022), so if you haven't upgraded to 2022, it's certainly worth looking at for this next feature. If I move this label out here, now this doesn't have a leader line because that is set within the style, but if I come in here, I can show the leader line and that will go to there. Now what the system is doing is that it puts the line underneath the label. That is standard Advanced Steel behavior. They did change the system for 2022. You now have this option in here. Leader line attachment says underline. You can actually now set it to middle. So the leader line will go to the middle of the label. And if you want a little horizontal section, we could set that to say 1.5 millimeters. That will give me that now. Now I can do that on multiple labels if we want. We can go advanced properties. We can say, oh, maybe I can't do it. We can do it. I'm just having a moment. You can't do it unless you say show the line. And then I can say set it to the middle. We want a horizontal landing of 1.5. Can put that in there, move these labels about if we want to. If I turn off the orthogonal, we can then go back to what we looked at before, where I can say, okay, what I want to do is I want to align to a reference, I want to align to the X, and I want to align these two. And if I now draw a line through these, so say we draw a line through there, they are now, if I could draw a straight line, that would obviously help. They are now all aligned. So our labeling looks a lot neater. Now, if you want this labeling with the short horizontal going to the middle, it is something we can look at as a management default. We're going to come back. I will look at some other management defaults as well, but as we're looking at this one, so we go drawing, labeling, general, and if we scroll down in here, you can see that we have these new options. Tagline for attachment position, I can set to middle. Tagline has a horizontal landing, I can say yes. And what tagline horizontal leader length do you want? So we'll set that to 1.5 millimeters. I'll then load those defaults back into Advanced Steel. I'll come into this model. I'll refresh those defaults and let's run an assembly drawing because that default will work on all of the labels that the system puts on the drawings. So if we run an assembly drawing, and right click show assembly detail. So you don't have to go through the document manager if you know that there's something in there, but you can see in here now all of these labels have the horizontal length of 1.5. They all go to the middle of the label, and again, if we really want to tidy these up, if we're really being picky, probably don't need to be this picky on assembly drawings, align to reference in the X, and I want these two to align to it. Same for the whole ones, and as we did before, if I move up to there, that one will jump. Let's have a look at sort of label content. What we'll do, we'll open up this camera drawing. Oh, wrong one. I wanted the 3D view one. Oh, I suppose it doesn't matter. Let's just go that one there. Show camera detail. Okay, now a little tip. Let's say we want to clear out all of these labels. I can select one. I can right click and I can go select similar, but the title of the view is classed as a label. So if you want to deselect it, just push and hold the shift key on your keyboard, keep it held, and then just click the label. And that's so we can delete all the labels. So if I go to insert a label, now what it does is it needs to load the rules for this drawing. So that's why it does take a second. And here I can add in the rules for these two labels, and I can right click and go Advanced Properties. And then what I have is I have a list of tokens that are available in here. So we have, for example, the part name. We can then put our own bits and pieces in here, and we can say part number assembly. I can then, let's say, put the material in. I don't know why I've got a column that I've modeled as glulam, but there we go. And I can put the coating in. But we don't have things like user attribute 1, user attribute 1 to 10. We don't have every token that's available. Now, the reason we don't have every token available for every single drawing is if we had every token that was available from the model for every single item, the size of the drawings would be increased because Advanced Steel has to store that data somewhere. So there are limits on what tokens you will see on the drawings. If we look at this plan drawing, for example, I believe I've got the same sort of thing in here. I've got a limited number of tokens. What I'm going to do is let's have a look. I've got a model view box in here. If you're not aware of what model views are things that we can put in the model to isolate a particular area of the model. What we can do though, new feature that was added, I think 2018, 2019, I can go to the properties and we have a camera in here. So what we'll do in here, we'll choose for this section selected plus pick box. We'll lock this in at say 1 to 20, and although I'm selecting the model view, if I go to run my drawing process, I can select that, click OK, and although it's a model view, it will actually, because I've enabled the camera properties, it will run the view for me. Now, hopefully this isn't going to make me look foolish, but this section selected plus pick box, I see everything in here. Now, like we said, if I had every token available for everything, this would fill up. The file sizes for every single drawing would get bigger and bigger. We're just going to look at how we can add a token as a one-off. So let's go back to our, say, plan view in here. And let's say what we want to do is we want the object top level, because we want to show top of steel for these beams. What we can do is we can go insert label. No, we don't, sorry. What we want to do is we want to go label content manager. Now what it says is, what detail view do we want to change the label content manager? So we want to change it for this one in here. And then what we can see is we get all these model objects, and these are the tokens that are available. So like we said, not everything is ticked. But what I can do is I can add object top level and object bottom level. Click OK. Probably, let's just make sure this will do it on a new drawing, a new label, and there we go, we've got object top level. So we can put in there TOS, which is top of steel, and that will give us that. If we look at an existing label, because we've gone into the label content manager, I can add object top level. But that is something that you might want on every drawing. Now what I'm going to do is I'm just going to click this little button in here, and that will show me the actual code, because the token I want is % object top level. So I'm going to copy that, because what you can do, and we've sort of looked at one or two management defaults already. If we go to the management defaults, we can go default, drawing labeling and general. And if we scroll down the list in here, there is a default that says tokens that will always come from the model. So what I can do is I can add in there, I can paste in object top level. We can reopen the databases. Now I've already done it for this drawing. Not why that's done that. No, don't want to do that. Let's put that back in. But what I can do, because we're using cameras, I can model. Oh, sorry, I can create a new camera. So we'll run this camera. Same style as it was before, so we didn't have every token available in it. But we can go camera details, so this will be 103. And if we zoom in here, I can double click on the label. If I go to a new line and I do top of steel, there's object top level as a default. Now, when we're looking at inserting the label, if I click this, you'll see that for a beam, in fact, I'll do that again. I might be jumping the gun here. When I go to insert a label, the first point you click is where the arrowhead goes. The second point you click is where the text goes. And the third point is the angle of the text. Now, if you look at my command line, it says return for parallel. So if you want it parallel to the object, you can do return. So if I come into here, we can say insert label, click there, return, and that will put it parallel with the object. Now, this label is doing the mark number and then the section size. So we've looked at the label content manager. So that's the tokens that you can put in the label. But if we do insert label, down in my command line it says select objects you want to label, or C for change label, or M for multiple selection. Now if I do C, this will actually open up the label content definition. Now we have the advanced bit, or we have the user bit, so I'm just going to expand the user bit. And if I look at beams, and I can expand that, and it says, right, if you find the main part, this is where the system, for a main part beam, puts the assembly number and the part name. Now, what I can look to do is I can then look to copy this, and I could call this, so we wanted top of steel all the time. We could call it part number name TOS for top of steel. Now this bit over here is just giving us an example, so we could just put in TOS plus 35.00. Click OK. You want to do a copy, and then we'll see when we go back to beams, I was doing it for main part beams. We've got my top of steel, and then I can put in there. Let me do a new line. Maybe I need to go back to this and do the new line. Alright, we'll just do it as TOS. And then we can look to add in object top level. I'll probably have to come in here and do the new line. We'll just leave it as it is for now. And I'll hit apply, and then what I need to do is I need to set the user as the default. And again, hit apply. Because what this will do is if I insert this label now, we are hoping that we will see the top of steel in there automatically. But that is not a view specific one. So I think now if we go back to this one, because this finds a main part beam, I've chosen a sloping one, not the best for a top of steel. Obviously doesn't like it for a 3D view. But can you see that that is now, even though I've changed to a different drawing, I've changed it for everything. So you only want to go in there, and you can only do it in user, and I would strongly advise that you don't manipulate what's already there, you copy what's there, because I can now come back and apply this, and I can actually set that as my standard. And if we go to insert a label, it'll go back to how it was, and the same on here. Now, if on a floor plan you wanted the top of steel to show all the time, that's where you would look to go and change the labels in the drawing style manager. So as a default, you would get that. But that is how we can look to manipulate the label content. The last few bits we're going to look at are strictly not labels. We're just going to look at a new feature that might just help your drawings, people might not be aware of. This is only applicable at the moment to the Weld symbol, but if you click on the Weld symbol, you do now, when you right click, have the option to add or remove a leader line. So if we want to remove, say, the Weld going in there, we can click on whichever line we want and remove it, and we can select it, right click and choose add leader line, and we can add those back in if we want to. So strictly not labels, but it is a very useful tool. We did say we would look at some management defaults. We have looked at quite a lot of the defaults. Well, we've looked at a couple of defaults as we've been going through. Just going to sort of highlight a few in here that will help everyone. And in fact, I'm just going to go back to what drawing did we run? That's fine. We look at this drawing in here. So if we look at this part drawing, you'll see that there are no labels for the holes. And that is because the drawing says all holes are diameter 22 unless noted otherwise. Now, this note in here, it is just a bit of fixed text, so there's nothing intelligent at all about that. That is linked to a management default. So if we look at drawing labeling in general, which is obviously where our labeling defaults are, there is a label here that says do not display labels for standard holes. So that's ticked, so that's why for a standard 22mm hole, it's not going to show anything. And if we scroll down in here, the standard hole diameter in my system at the moment is 22mm. Now you could change that to 18. If you changed it to 18, you would have to go through your drawing prototypes and manually change that note. What I can do though here is I can say untick that option and reopen the databases. Not sure if I have to rerun it or if I can just update the drawing. Try updating it and see what it does, and there we go. Because I've now said for the default do not display labels for standard holes, I've unticked it. It will now show the labels for standard holes. So to avoid any doubt, if that's what you want to do, that's what we can do on that. What I'm going to do is I'm going to run, see what we've got in here. That was something we were testing. Let's choose this one. Okay, what I'm going to do, I'm going to set this at 1 to 50. And I'm going to set this to 1 to 50 as well. Try and get both these views to run on one drawing. So I will do selected A1. Let's run them both on drawing 109, which is what I want. But what I've got in here is I've got two views in here. Now, if I do a cut view on this drawing, this will give me section A on this view. It's decided it wants to go in there. So I can move that over there. So that's section A on that view. Now if I add a section on this view, what the system will do is that the system will add that in as section A as well. And what I now end up with is, 2 section A's on the drawing, which some people then might not like because it's not always obvious what section does what. There is a management default under drawing labeling that will control that. It's a bit of an odd, you might struggle to find it. It's in here towards the bottom of drawing labeling general. It's called unique cut view names in the drawing sheet. So what we'll do is we'll turn that on. We'll come back to our drawing. And we'll go back to 109 because I closed it without saving. And I'm just going to make sure that my management defaults are reloaded so that the system doesn't make me look a fool during this webinar. We'll add our little section. So that's section A. I can move that down here. And if we do the same on here, I am hoping that it is going to read this default. And then we have section B. I didn't, because it's a section through a certain bit, I've obviously not set the depth to actually show it, but there is, so I've not got the right depth settings on my cut view, but there is section B and section B, and the same will work with the call out views. So although the management default said cut views, the call out view, which is our blow up option, that uses the same information. So that is detail A, but in here this should now read detail B. So that's quite a good one. Unique cut view, and do not, where's it gone? Do not display labels for standard holes. So I'm just going to turn that back on. We've obviously looked at the new one as well for our tagline position, whether it's in the middle, whether it has a horizontal landing, and what the horizontal leader length is. You can see in here there are obviously lots of management defaults, but I'm already out of time for today's webinar, so maybe we can look at some more management defaults in the future. Okay, hopefully you all enjoyed that and picked up a few bits and pieces. I will keep the session running for a few more minutes if anyone does have any questions on what we've looked at today. If you want to type them in the questions window, and then we can try and answer them, or I'll answer them offline. And if there aren't any questions, thank you very much for joining me. I am running another webinar this afternoon where we're going to be looking at point clouds. So hopefully you can join me for that one as well. Okay, well, I can't see any questions coming through at the moment. You do all have my contact details on the handout, so if there are any questions, obviously just reach out. Thank you very much for watching today's webinar. Hopefully we'll see you on this afternoon's webinar and Friday's webinar. We're going to be looking at the UCS tab. And if not, enjoy the rest of your day.